Good evening, Connor, and welcome everybody to the Leinster Laighin, your monthly Leinster Rugby Roundup show brought to you by the ThreeBOD Rugby Group, which is where you can find coverage of international rugby and grassroots and everything in between. Conor Broomfield, the Four Provinces Rugby Supporters Group, how you doing?
I'm good, very good, Nathan. How are you tonight?
Not too bad at all. Really looking forward. We got a great show lined up tonight, talking with a few talking points from Leinster's win over Scarlets, plus a host of panellists to talk about last weekend's Six Nations action and what we've got to come up. So without further ado, let's get cracking.
Good.
Well, Connor, now we can get going. Since we've spoke, Leinster had two games. The tight win down in Munster, which everyone saw as a bit of a Six Nations dress rehearsal, and then more recently, the kids went over to Parky Scarlets and secured a 52-25 win. What's the first thing you want to talk about from that game?
The Scarlets match. A lot of positives from the Scarlets match. Watching some of the young guys play, coming through, the likes of Max O'Reilly, Hawkshaw coming off the bench, and the big one at the moment is Jamie Osbourne. The whole world is talking about him around Dublin 4 and surrounding areas anyway. Jamie has got the world at his feet. He's a really special talent. I get slagged off a bit in the group by some of the lads about getting overexcited about younger players at the province. But if you look at this guy, he's 19 years old. He didn't go to a rugby school. It's very hard to come through and make an impression at Leinster without coming through the school system, but to do that and work your way into the first team squad before you're even in the academy says something about the caliber of this young man. He's 6'1". He's over 90 kilos, so he's a big guy, but it's not his size. It's everything else that goes with it. It's his speed, it's his awareness, it's his coordination. It's his composure. To come into a match like this, Scarlets. I know context here. It's a weakened Scarlets team. He's coming into a team on the front foot. But look at him from the minute he came onto the field. Like he comes on. He eyes up Mac Nichol and takes him back about 10 meters. So a 19-year-old kid, absolutely fearless.
That was a massive. McNichol, he's somebody who I've always liked watching. I mean, I watched a lot of him in Super Rugby whenever he was down in New Zealand, and then obviously he's come over to Scarlets. He's been absolutely brilliant for them, and he's probably a little bit unfortunate not to have gotten more Wales caps. But so he's slouch, and then this 19-year-old lad just comes off the bench, and the first thing he does is absolutely smash him. And also, he lined it up at centre. I think I'm right in saying the chat I heard before the game was if he was going to get a game, it would be he'd come on the wing. So he's coming on in a massive position defensively. That's the hardest position on the pitch to defend 13, and he just goes and smashes this guy first up, makes a brilliant read. I don't know. First up, this kid, he looks the real deal.
He does. We saw a glimpse of glimpses of his talent in the A match up in Ravenhill a few weeks previously, and even in a beaten team, a team that was getting beaten up front, like he was taking ball on the back foot and making yards, and everyone was talking about him afterwards. All the Ulster guys I was chatting to in the group, like, are going, wow, this guy is He got bounced off a couple of times in the tackle by Hayden Hyde that day, but you'd expect that.
In terms of, where do you think he's going to play? Because he looked at home at 13. He played wing in that A game. He's got to me he's got a very similar skill set to the likes of someone like Gary Ringrose, but with a bit more size. But obviously Gary's not old, so that position's probably blocked off. So where is he getting in this team?
Pardon me. For me, he's been shuffled around the back line a bit. He played. I think he came out on the wing in another A match that we didn't get to see live. Maybe the Connacht match. He's been moved around. For me, with that level of rugby smarts and the composure and the ability, the game awareness, I would, and the size and the guile, he is a 13 for me, from what I've seen from him. I'm sure he's the type of guy to can fit in anywhere, and probably in the three quarter line or full back. But when you have them sort of that sort of skill set, I think he's a 13. Yeah, Gary Ringrose is only 25 years old. He's going to be around for a long time, but we'll see how it pans out.
The big thing for me about Jamie is that, you know, when we talk about Gary, you know, he was someone coming out of school there was a lot of hype about, and then the other young lad who I was thinking of who had a lot of noise coming out of school and through the age groups was Jordan Larmour. Both of those lads, you know, they're similar enough in terms of skill set and footwork to Jamie. Obviously, Jamie's got a bit more size, but didn't hear that noise coming out of Jamie. And maybe that is because he didn't go to a big rugby school, like you say.
Oh, absolutely.
Although I'm
not sure he played rugby at all in the school. He went to NACE CBS. He did get representative honours. He played Ireland under 18 clubs, but that doesn't get the media focus of the schools teams, obviously.
Anyway, Conor, we've got about 5 minutes before we bring in all our guests for our Six Nations chat. I know there's a couple of other things you want to touch on. The big takeaway from the Scarlets game, even though Conan got man of the match, Levy put up some unreal stats, tackling and carrying wise. He got an early try as well. But what I thought was interesting was, based on that performance, even though he was arguably, a lot of people seem to think he was more impressive than Conan. Conan is now in the Ireland squad since Peter O'Mahony's suspension. Dan Levy isn't. There's definitely a mood of we're not rushing him.
Absolutely. And rightly so. First of all, without giving his whole life story, I've been a massive fan of Dan Levy since it was in Michael's. I was watching him on Setanta Sports. There's the man now, him and David Hawkshaw, both of them coming back from long-term injuries, and both of them are doing brilliantly, thankfully. Levy, yeah, isn't it just wonderful to see him back playing at this level? First of all, you know, from anyone watching him in that dark day in April 2019 when he suffered them catastrophic injuries, it looked like a long shot, him coming back as a professional rugby player. But to see him come back, and they did. They handled his comeback very delicately, very carefully. If you remember the first couple of matches, they had him on the bench, and they were playing. They were going with a 6-2 forward split just to cover, with an extra back row, just to cover, because they weren't sure if he was going to last when he came on. Gradually, his performances have been improving since then. That was the end of October, so he's back. Just over 3 months now, and then he gradually they've been increasing his game time, and he's been increasing his productivity. Like we saw him there with 11 tackles, 17 carries, a try, and as well as that, it's the intensity is there again. You know, the aggression at the breakdown is just wreaking havoc. All the qualities you'd associate with Dan, what we saw of him at the highest level before. I don't know how much further he's going to go, or if he's going to get back to test level. You know, I'm just delighted to see him back playing at this level.
Sorry about that. I dropped out there for a second, but we're back. We're all good. I personally, I think there's no question he's getting back to test level. I just think it's a case of when. I think
I think we need to see him in a big one, Nathan. I think we need to see him in a faster, high intensity match to just see how he copes with against a more dominant pack.
Nathan needed the toilet. Apologies, folks. Well, I tell you what, well, not quite. It would have been a quick toilet trip if so. Grant, well, we've only got a couple of minutes left before the Six Nations chat, but quickly, what I wanted to talk about. So, obviously, well, I've got a question here. Are Leinster still as strong as previous, do you feel? Do you still fancy your chances for the Pro 12 and the EBCR Cup? So, Europe. Personally, Pro 12, yes. I think there's a massive game against Ulster coming up on March the 6th, which is a way away yet, but it'll be before our next show, so we won't get to talk about it greatly. But I think if they win that, you know, they put a bit of daylight between themselves and Ulster at the top of the table. I think, and then obviously if we don't finish top and the Rainbow Cup doesn't happen, there'll be playoffs anyway. Regardless, I still back us to finish top. I'd still be confident about the Pro 12. Europe is an interesting one. No Saris, obviously, but even still, I think Leinster underperformed that day against Saris. And the other two that worry me are Exeter and Racing, and then obviously Toulouse as well. I think if we get a trip away to a French side, I think that could be interesting. I'd back us on the side. Exeter's an interesting one because their fast line speed is something that Leinster and Ireland have struggled with. Saris do the same thing. I think they play a style of rugby that if you can attack them well, you can poke holes. I think we saw that from Racing in the final, the European final. But Finn Russell had a few moments of madness that gifted Exeter some tries. But even still, I thought Racing had them in that game, and I think Leinster do play. They don't throw the ball around as much as Racing, but they do like to transition quickly into attack, and they're an excellent attacking side. So I think that would be the matchup I'd love to see, and that would be the one matchup that worries me. What do you think?
Absolutely, I'd be concerned about Exeter. They're very well drilled, very attack you at to break down, great line speed. They're exactly the type of team Leinster struggle with because they don't allow you to play rugby. So we have to match them, but we have to go with a more physical pack. We have to vary our game, and we need to be a lot smarter. If we are playing them, we need to be smarter than we were against Saracens back in October.
Look, it's easy to talk about mitigating factors and stuff, but I thought you have to think if the scrum doesn't go as badly as it does against Saracens, we at least get an entry into the game at the first half, and we're not staying at that massive deficit. I don't think Andrew Porter is a bad scrummager by any means, so I'm surprised that happened to him that day. Obviously, we're missing Tig as well. Anyway, that's probably about all we have time for on the Leinster chat, which is a shame because I know you wanted to talk about Harry Byrnes. My take on Harry is that people are asking for him to be thrown into the squad if Johnny doesn't play this weekend. It's not going to happen. You've got the COVID bubbles. Oh, you've got a question here. Sorry I was on late. Did you cover 9 and 10 for Ireland? I'm assuming you have. Did Sexton's poor performance versus Wales warrant a new 10? We're going to talk about that in our chat, Six Nations chat, which is going to happen in a minute. Personally, I disagree with the shout that Sexton played badly, but we'll get into that. But the Harry Byrne question quickly. We love him. He plays really well. My big thing about him is that he plays well despite fast line speed, and he's still got that skill set, which is something that his brother Ross has struggled whenever playing over in Twickenham. He's got a raw deal, 2 caps, 2 games in Twickenham. Anyway, so I'm very excited by him, but he's not going to play the Six Nations, and I think any chatter otherwise it's a bit, especially the fact that the bubbles and they have to be really careful about calling people up. And he's going.
Yeah, but Nathan, they sent Gavin Coombs home and brought Jack Conan in. Like, how strictly are they policing this bubble? I think Harry Byrne needs to be brought in. I think he's the future out half. I think we've a problem there, and there's a big gap between Sexton and there's no other obvious long-term 10 there for us. I think in a different world we might have had Joey Carberry, Ian Madigan, and Paddy Jackson all competing for the 10 jersey now for various reasons. None of them are where they should be. So I think we need to start planning for the future. I can give you a list of a long list of very successful out halves that have been brought into the test arena, younger than Harry Byrne is now. Wilkinson, Carter, even O'Gara, Ntamack more recently for France. They've all been brought in younger. I don't think he needs 2 years of European experience. Certain players of the right caliber are fast tracked, and I think he needs to be one of them.
I agree with that. I don't understand, and I agree with the fast track, and I agree that the COVID bubbles haven't been as tight as we thought. Harry should be tried out for the Italian match.
Yeah, hopefully. Good point, Gerald. Good
point. What annoys me a little bit with this is I can see the logic somewhat, because you don't want to throw. If there's one position you don't want to throw in too early, it's 10. But also they brought up Casey as a development player, and realistically he's only going to play against Italy, so it's a little bit inconsistent with the Harry. But maybe they decided to take the 3.
Nathan, we're not talking about throwing him in at 10 of France, like we're talking about getting him into the squad, getting him acclimatized, know the systems, and give him a bit of time against Italy. See how he gets on.
Exactly,
and give him room to make mistakes and learn on the job.
Exactly, and the other thing is Leinster haven't got any Pro 14 games at the moment. They're not playing until I think the weekend of the 26th of February. So it's not like he's missing out on game time for Leinster, which would be more valuable. Anyway, that's the Harry Byrnes chat. I think a lot of people agree with that. I think people calling for him to play a bit too much, but in the squad, fair enough. Anyway, yeah. So let's move on. We've got our panel of Six Nations guests. I've been waiting patiently, and apologies to keep them waiting. We too excited Leinster fans got a bit carried away there with some Harry Byrnes chat. But so we've got our English representative, a Welsh representative, and a French representative to talk us through their opinions on how their sides got on last weekend, and of course to give us their opinions on the action that is coming up. Let's go in order of the games as they happened. I'm quickly just going to double check I'm right here. I believe the first game of last weekend was France versus Italy. So it was indeed, and it was a 50-10 win for France. So we'll go to you first. Bonsoir, Yannick. What was your takeaway from a French point of view from that game?
Good evening, everybody. Well, obviously, fairly happy with the performance of the French team. Expected a bit better, but it's the first game of Six Nations, so we didn't know how to approach that game really, because there was a lot of new trial, I think, on that game. I was happy. I thought we could do much better in breakdown. I thought we were a bit slow on the road, particularly in the first half. That was corrected in the second half. Well, good. Yeah, I think good. I think from now they're going to go stronger and stronger. And I thought that was the first game. We did want to play that game to have a good win, not as we normally do, beat them by 20 points and we let them come back. And after the already struggle, this time we play like I want to say like an Anglo-Saxon team. Like we did go try to beat them and carry on and carry on and carry on. So that is really positive as a French point of view. You can see a change of the French team. They attack, they want to, they don't. It's a big change of mentality there. The new coaching staff, you can see it. So I think it was good. I think yes, good, fairly happy. I don't think Italy done as bad as people said.
I agree.
One thing I think they go a fairly good number 9 and number 10. I think they're going to cause a lot of problem to a lot of teams. They will not beat anybody, but I think that Varley and what's his name, Garbisi, number 10, isn't it?
Garbisi is something special.
Yeah, he's very good, and I think people don't give them enough credit. So I think I could see them score a couple of tries against England this weekend, maybe, and. I think from the French point of view, it's a good victory. It's a good, he's in Rome, 50 points. Italy could score a couple of tries. They have 2 tries disallowed, I believe, wasn't it? So,
yes,
they didn't do as bad as people said. They have a lot of possession of the ball, but that is the way French rugby we play now. We leave the ball to people, and when we get it, we do something with it. So, yeah, that is my, I think we've done fairly well.
Right, well, Gerald Williamson has come up with a point there saying Italy have gone backwards. Defence was poor. Tough job for Franco Smith, their coach. I'm sure the Italy question is something we'll get onto at some point because it's something a lot of people are talking about. My 2 cents are that they actually looked all right and their structures looked good. Just a few missed tackles in crucial areas cost them. And if there's one team you cannot miss tackles on, it's France with their broken field runners. Anyway, I'm sure that's an issue we can get everyone.
Yeah, if I could come in on that one, Nathan, I think it's important there to highlight as well just how inexperienced that Italian backline is. They have a combined total of 24 caps between 7 players, and one of them players has 8. So you have a very young scrum half and out half there, like 19 and 20, 21 years old. I think there's real signs of life in the Italian back line, and they're missing a couple of forwards at the moment. So I actually thought that was, I know they got split open on numerous occasions by Monsieur Dupont, but he's going to do that to everyone.
Right.
So
the Antoine Dupont chat, I'm sure I think let's hold that until we get on to the Ireland-France preview, because I'm conscious that Debbie is waiting. Debbie Knight is waiting patiently. And then the second game of the weekend was, well, put it this way, I'm sure you're happy that we hadn't, the person we had on to talk about Scotland has pulled out last minute. So that makes your life tonight slightly easier. 6-11 at Twickenham. Lots of narratives and stuff coming out about the Saracens players, about Owen Farrell, about kicking it too much. There was a viral screen grab from Owen Toolan that went out with Farrell kicked it with a 7-on-2 overlap or something like that. Eddie Jones then said it's his fault, he didn't prepare the players properly. I think that's just what all good coaches do when they lose. They just try and take some heat off their players. A lot of things coming out of this game. What were your takeaways?
Well, unlike Yannick, I can't say good things really about the England team. Looking at Italy within their game, they made 7 line breaks to France's 8. Do you know how many England made? England made none. They didn't make a single line break. I think, as I said to you guys before we started, I think that it was Saracens' fault narrative is lazy and predictable, because not a single player on that pitch played well. And I think to put all of the focus on the things that England did wrong is actually to disregard what Scotland did right. And they made 33 more passes than England did during that game, which tells another story. I'm a cricket fan, so I'm very into stats and facts, really. While England made a lot more tackles than Scotland did, they missed 29 tackles. You're not going to have a good result when you miss 29 tackles during a match. It was very poor from England. And I think Owen did. I mean, he wears his. You're right, Rhian. Farrell looked shocked at the end of that match. He did. He gets an awful lot of stick. I don't think he's necessarily that happy to take that limelight as captain with interviews, etc. I don't know that his personality copes with that terribly well. And no one is going to have enjoyed losing that way. It was poor.
Not at all. And I'm glad you highlighted how well Scotland played, because there were some really good individual performances in there. I'm kind of gutted John couldn't come on, because I would have liked to talk to him about Cam Redpath. He looks very handy. Conor, have you got anything to add on the England game, or should we go to Ben?
Just a quick one, Debbie. Take your point about not being all default to the guys playing with Saracens, but at the same time, they're such key players. The likes of Itoje and Farrell and Jamie George. They're such key players for England, and they're so important to England's tactic of getting dominance and keeping the opposition pressed back. That when they're not at their best, England struggle. And if you look at the matches England have lost over the last four years, I think they've over the last 2 years, I think they've lost 4 matches and drawn 1. They're all games where England can't get that dominance. So do you think there's a problem there, a change in tactics in a match, or do you think it's too scripted? They're going out with a game plan, they can't deviate from it. Do you think this is an issue there?
I think it's a huge issue, and actually, sitting on that bench. I mean, when we spoke about the first match, sitting on that bench, I'm not saying that a prop doesn't change a game, But in reality, you're more likely to get game changers from the players that are coming on in the backs. And we look at, well, Ben Earl is a forward. He was on for 13 minutes in that match. Max Malins is a fantastic player at fullback. He got 5 minutes. And George Ford, 11 minutes. But when he came on, he did the same thing that Farrell was doing. So I totally think it's a scripted game, and they don't seem to be able to deviate from it. I don't really understand it.
Rugby's a hard sport to play on the back foot, though.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. If you're losing the battle in the forwards, you're usually in trouble.
It's an interesting one because I watched back. Hang on, we've got a question here. Is there a problem with Farrell playing 10-12 back to 10? Do England need to pick him and keep him at 10? Well, they've gone with George Ford at 10. I think it looks like England tend to do horses for courses. Against the more physical sides, they'll put Farrell at 10, and when they do want to run a little bit more, and for the stick that George Ford gets, I do like his game management. I think he's very good at that. They do throw him at 10. Obviously, Italy, they've backed themselves to run Italy off the park a bit. They've gone Ford Farrell, at 10-12. Probably the right call, Debbie?
Yeah, I mean, the worry for me there is that those are the only two names that we talk about when we're coming to England. When we've got Joe Simmons, who is a captain of a double winning team that isn't getting anywhere near the team, and then you've got someone like Marcus Smith. You know, at some stage, I want to see new names coming in for that 10 position. I'm a huge fan of Ford. I think he has an innate talent. He's not very big. I think his thoughts on him tackling are not quite what people think. I think he's actually pretty good with the tackling. But it's time to. I mean, Yannick mentioned, or someone sent in, try someone out for the Italy match when you were talking about Byrne. I think isn't the Italy match time for England to try some people out?
Exactly.
It's a very experienced side you're going with for the Italy match. Maybe your loss to Scotland has had an effect on selection. Any possible experimentation he had in mind, it's probably got cast to one side after your loss.
I think he's got to give.
You have a tight bubble there as well, though, Debbie, haven't you?
No, yeah, that's
true. You have a small panel of players due to COVID restrictions, haven't you?
But you know, we've got Courtney Laws coming in at 6, and you've got Jack Willis sitting on the bench, who is a wonderful player. I think Eddie's very much for the win, isn't he? And is it important this weekend? It is important that England win after what happened last weekend. But at what stage does he actually start planning for 2023, which is what France are doing, and actually winning as they do it? But let's try them out for the Italy match. Well, I'm not seeing any names there that we're trying out for the Italy match. Are you?
No. It sounds like everybody. It sounds like everybody apart from France is having the same conversation. You know, throw the kids in, and maybe not throw the kids in, but try things up a little bit before 2023. But because everyone's looking at France and how that's worked. I don't know. Maybe you could talk about Scotland playing people like Redpath and saying that's one way of doing that. But sadly, John's not here to talk about that. But anyway, we'll talk about the England-Italy game in a little bit more detail when we do our previews. We've still got one more game to look back on. This is where Ben Ford comes in. Ben, how you doing? Were Wales 5 points better than Ireland on the weekend?
Good evening, guys. No, in the bluntest possible terms, no. I think my heart was saying that Wales were going to pinch it by a small margin, but I think my head said that game was easily 10 to 12 points for an Ireland victory. And we'll talk until we blew in the face about the things that happened during the game. We can talk about the Omani red card. We can talk about the kick to the corner that's gone dead. But I just think if you look at every asset of that game, Ireland dominated. And as a Welsh fan sitting at home watching it, we go one man up and it plays like we're 2 men down. And it was really frustrating from my point of view, going back to Wales of sort of like 10, 12 years ago, where we were performing in chunks. The first 10, 15 minutes we came out firing. And then we had the red card incident. We went off the boil. Second half, we came out for another 10 minutes, and then we let Ireland attack us again. And our game management towards the end was just so bizarre. So to come out with a win, I think we count ourselves extremely lucky.
You talk about game management. How fast was your heart beating when Gareth Davies grubbers through with 10 seconds left on the clock?
I won't quote what I said, but several swear words with a beetroot red face were flying out. I just don't understand in that situation. You know, I was saying to my dad when we were watching the game, that for me was like reminiscent of Ronan O'Gara in the second test, 2009. You know, there's few seconds left on the clock. You know, keep it sensible, play in the right areas of the pitch, and he just kicks it straight into the Irish in possession. And up to that point, we were looking so shaky in defence anyway. So, yeah, I was almost tempted to turn the television off when Gareth put that kick through. But yeah, strange one for me.
That was a strange one. Conor, come to you with go-to for the Irish aspect. Ben was a little bit concerned there about Wales's defence. Did Wales defend poorly, or did Ireland offer anything new and slightly, a little bit of variation in attack that we haven't really seen yet? But the Mike Cat structure is that improving?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a bit of both, really. Like Wales put in a huge tackle count. To have well over 200 tackles between the team. Like Tom Francis 19, Alan Wynne high Tipper high 20s. Ben, you mentioned there on Monday night your frustration at Wales' tactic of commissioning so many people to the breakdown. Which wasn't happening early in the game and hadn't happened in previous Ireland matches. Personally, I think that's a lot down to how Ireland played. I think possibly it's the Paul O'Connell influence. Maybe Farrell's had a hand in it as well, but we're definitely doing a few things differently. Our ruck success was very high, 98%. We were making a lot more yards than we normally would through the forwards, even though we were playing with a 7-man pack. There was men coming onto the ball at speed. We were using Tadhg Byrne out between 10 and 12, and using Josh van der Fleer. So we were changing the point of attack, and we were a lot more dynamic than we were in previous matches, and that was a big plus for me. Tadhg Byrne, I thought was borderline world class. His stats are just off the charts. Like he's 21 carries, joints high 48 rucks, or highest tackler as well. And he just put himself out a bit really well, and we were punching holes, and our tempo was good. Our tempo was high, and Wales were forced, even though they had an extra man, they were forced to commit more men to the breakdown.
Yeah, there's been some chatter this week. I read, I know Gordon Darcy had a pop at the Irish attack in the Irish Times, and I just thought, what game was he watching? I mean, it's international rugby. It's international rugby. You're not going to make line breaks every time, but as long as you're trying things and offering the defence different pictures every time, which Ireland did. They had Ringrose at 10, they had James Ryan and Tadhg Byrne throwing balls at the back, inside balls. Hugo Keenan, Debbie mentioned just there in our chat that Keenan was excellent. He was. His offloading ability. He picked a great line off Ringrose as well for one of the early attacks. So his ability to read the game and spot space was fantastic. And I just thought, these things are new to the Irish system. It's not something they've done before, but they're trying them and they are working. They're maintaining possession for long periods of time. You're not gonna break the line every single time, but so long as you're making incremental gains and not getting knocked back, it's the key thing. Where Ireland's struggle, particularly against England, is consistently being knocked back in the collision time and time again. That didn't happen on the weekend, even with Wales' physical defenders such as Alan Wynne-Jones, Tipuric, Faletau. It didn't happen. So that was really encouraging.
Yeah, what we're doing differently is we're not taking the ball and throwing it to a one-out runner and letting him go into contact and banging our heads off a brick wall, expecting the results to be different. there's actually a bit of variation there now, and there's a bit of tempo. Our problem is, we don't really have a playmaker now at 9 or 10. We've no one to inject pace in. We're creating space by putting forwards out in midfield and finding soft shoulders and little holes. But Conor Murray doesn't have a break, and now I thought Murray played well. I'm not having to go at him, and Sexton likewise. You're not getting an injection of speed off either of them, and until that changes, it's going to be hard to create space in the outside backs. We talked the last show, Nathan, about having a second playmaker at 12. We really need a playmaker at 9 or 10. Yeah,
I think that's going to be difficult to work in though when you've got Henshaw and Ringrose playing so well. We've got about just over 20 minutes left. Let's move on to this weekend's action. Ben, let's stick with you. Scotland on the weekend, they looked pretty good. You didn't seem completely convinced by Wales. I know we've got the graphic for both squads to go up at some point. After hearing the two selections, I think they came out today. What if you are worried? Where are you worried? What positions on the pitch are you worried about?
I think if we talk back briefly at looking at Sunday, I think we didn't offer Ireland any sort of threat. We now and again we threw George North into the mix, but I think other than that we offered very little in attack. So nice to see that Liam Williams back from suspension and that centre partnership with Tompkins and Watkin. I think if given the right platform to play from, they could give Scotland all sorts of trouble. Halaholo getting his call up yesterday. And straight into the team. Fingers crossed he gets on for his first cap, and he's a player that I think could light up the championship if given the opportunity. But I think we've just got to fire shots. I think at the moment you could tell that we're a side that have struggled to get performances together lately, and it reflects in the way that we're playing. It's very safe rugby. It's very conservative, and we're playing in small patches because I think we're afraid to lose the ball and be conceding points left, right, and centre. If you look back to Sunday, that period towards the end of the game, if you imagine that in a situation where you're sort of 2 or 3 points down, I just don't see us fighting back the way that we were playing. It seems like at the moment we've got all the ingredients, but we haven't got a recipe to follow. We just seem to be playing what we see in front of us, and it doesn't seem to be working. So the big thing that I want to see from that side on Saturday is I want to see some shots fired. I want to see them giving Scotland trouble like they did to England, firing some shots off. Yeah, not everything's going to come, like you said just now, Nathan. You're not going to make line breaks every time you attack. You're not going to make those big holes. But what you want to see is, as you mentioned, those incremental gains, which over time you get in sides to concede penalties, you get in sides to make those little infringements that are going to get you the position and the points that you need to build a score. But yeah, that's my biggest thing. I think we need to actually show some sort of promise in attack. I think the forward pack, we've had to make a few little changes, but I think the forward pack will take care of itself. The amount of leadership you've got in that pack is superb, but I think the back line needs a little more guidance on the weekend.
We talk about Sorry, go on, Conor. Go on.
Ben, sorry, Nathan. Ben, do you think you were compromised more by mistakes and your line out malfunctioning than anything else? Like you didn't really get that many chances, did you, to go through phases or create? There was constantly being interrupted by knock-ons or the set piece going wrong.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think the line out was probably the biggest thing, and it's the biggest thing I've seen documented this week, is that our line out didn't seem to have any real purpose. It was strange calls in strange areas of the field. And like you said, you're never going to get that front foot ball if you're constantly trying to scrape possession every time. But I don't think you can underestimate that performance in the line out in particular on Sunday from Ireland had Paul O'Connell stamped all over it. And I think Wales were never going to get an easy ride at the line out. But that meant they would have had to have been on top form to get that ball they needed. And like you said, the mistakes, by the time we got to halftime, I was scratching my head thinking, how are we going to get back into this game? I really didn't understand where the team were going. And every time we did try something, it was a little knock on or forward passes and things like that. So, yeah, mistakes are definitely a big thing that have crept into the Welsh performances over the sort of, let's talk about the last 18 months or so. We're just struggling to build into games because we can't seem to get that foothold.
Yeah, I guess, obviously, John's not here, but from a Scotland point of view, what I'm excited about seeing is Hamish Watson going against Justin Tipperick, and the back row battle as well. Matt Ferguson I thought he was absolutely outstanding with his physicality in the carry against England. And obviously him and Toby Faletau could be an interesting matchup if they come. I mean, we always talk about these matchups in opposite jerseys, but how often do the players actually come up against the man wearing the same number as them? I guess. Yeah. Obviously, Finn Russell split opinion a little bit on the weekend, didn't he? Between whether he was fantastic or was he, what was he doing trying left-footed drop goals? I think that's just how Finn Russell's going to play, isn't it? But anyway, let's move on from this one and let's go back to it's the first game of the weekend, I believe. Debbie is we talked about a little bit about the England selection before. My big takeaway from the England team was, if you're going to pick a lad at 12 who has dominated in a losing Worcester side this year and then only give him 2 carries all game, why are you dropping him the week after? Debbie, you there?
I am now.
Poor old Ollie Lawrence.
Yeah, I agree. Poor old Ollie Lawrence. It's to fit our character, isn't it? It's sticking with his. I think Eddie Jones is innately stubborn when it comes to his picks. He wants to have Owen Farrell there. He's made him his captain, so that's a difficult person to drop, isn't it? But poor old Ollie Lawrence has paid the price for Owen Farrell not doing very well at 10 last week, I think. He wants to change things round and get George Ford on at the beginning. I mean, is Lawrence even on the bench? I don't think he is he? No, he's nowhere to be seen. It must be upsetting for these young players, actually. And Odogwu as well is another fantastic player. We haven't seen him yet. Harry Randall, and I mentioned earlier, we're playing Italy, and I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect to Italy there. As we said, I think Garbisi is a fantastic player. I don't think the forward pack is going to compete against any of the other packs in this Six Nations. But surely it's a time to, if he can try the players that he's actually got in his bubble of 28. He's taken Harry Randall in there, and again, he doesn't get a look in. It's Ben Youngs again.
Yeah. I think Eddie wants a good win and to get back on track, and make a statement.
Is there anything to be said? Is there anything to be said for giving the lads who played poorly on the weekend a chance to get that out of their system? And if you're going to do that, it's going to be against Italy, or do you think would you rather a case of, you played poorly, this is Italy, get the likes of Odogwu, get Randall in, this is the game where you get those guys in?
But I think if we were going to drop the players that played badly, you'd have to drop all of them, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And he's not got enough in his bubble of 28 for a whole new 23, has he?
No.
I'm struggling a little bit with Billy playing
really?
At 8. I am a bit. Yeah, I am.
Why is that?
Because I don't think he's been himself. I don't think he was in the autumn. And in the autumn, he looked quite fit. I think he ate too many mince pies over Christmas. And I don't think he's got that level of fitness. And he seems to play. I mean, he didn't play him for 80 minutes against Scotland. But he's a big man, Billy Vunipola, and he has him running for 80 minutes as a rule.
Debbie, do you think the injuries maybe are catching up on him? He's in. We see this more often now with really explosive, powerful players. We've had it here in Ireland with the likes of Sean O'Brien and Cian Healy and others. They're not peaking at 27, 28, 29. a lot of these players they're certainly at their most explosive, maybe in their mid-20s, and the injuries start to catch up on them, and they slow down a bit. Do you think Billy's just going through a bad run, or do you think maybe the injuries are catching up?
I think, well, the injuries for Billy have mostly been his arm, haven't they? So I don't necessarily think that is the case. I think he's a player that definitely needs game time to be game fit.
His hamstring as well.
Yeah, but he does concern me, especially when I'm looking at poor Ben Earl that only got 13 minutes, and he's not got the size that Billy's got, has he? You've got Nathan Hughes sitting at Bristol, who's got the size and has form.
There's another Simmons brother.
Yeah, Simmons, Exeter guy.
Yeah, Sam. I can understand the thought that Sam might not fit into that setup.
Okay.
But a European Player of the Year, yep, and has got nowhere near. Hopefully, Dombrandt will start to come through. He's having a better season with Harlequins. He's hopefully now going to be playing in a team that's winning. But I just hope I'm not having to defend the Saracens players on Sunday morning, because 23 players were poor last weekend, not just the Saracens players. And Sean Maitland played very well for Scotland.
He did.
I just think at the minute that England have probably got their best 23 not in the squad. Like you look at the players that came through Saturday, like Ben Obano. I think he's been superb for Bath. You've got the likes of him. You mentioned Dombrandt. I've loved watching him play this year. I know that Sanderson came out this week and said there's a big call to get Marlon Yard back in the England setup. There's so many really good England players that are on the cusp at the moment. Maybe not Marlon Yard then. No, I just think that there seems to be this like protective bubble around some of the England players, and I feel like in Wales's case is similar as well. It's like the likes of Biggar. I think personally it's time to start bleeding new talent through now, and I think some of the England players, they've got this little bubble around them that they're not going to be dropped so that they can try other players. Like I thought against Italy, like you said, they'd have really given the likes of a Dogwool, Randall that run out they deserve. Yeah,
Max Malins. I mean, if we're talking wingers, we've got to talk Ollie Thorley.
Yeah.
I don't see Marlon Yard doesn't get anywhere near that England team again. Sorry, Marlon. But you look at Ollie Thorley, he's a fantastic player. I think he got picked in the squad, didn't he? Once I don't know if he's had a cap at all, but has he?
It's funny you mentioned Ollie. Actually, friend of a friend went to school with Ollie, so I know him reasonably well. And he, I don't know if you saw, he had an unbelievable break against Saints a few weeks ago that led to I think a Willie Hines try. So he's in decent form. He didn't play much over. He got capped in the rescheduled Italy game. So he got one cap. Does Ollie, but he didn't play much for Gloucester over the Christmas period, so he didn't get picked.
I worry that someone like the Dog has been picked so that Italy couldn't pick him. He's why take these guys into camp and then completely ignore them? I don't really understand it. I hope that this week, actually, no matter what happens, I hope he brings these guys off the bench a bit earlier than he did against Scotland. It was obvious that the game needed to change at the weekend, and he didn't. You've got fantastic playmakers sitting there on the bench, and really just no effect on the game because he didn't give them enough game time.
Another fan crying out for their country to try something. It seems like it's a bit of a theme going on. Yeah. Speaking of countries, because we're a little bit tight on time, so let's move on. Speaking of countries who have tried things, everybody seems to like. Well, of course, there's the Italian team for the weekend. I mean, for me, the big one there is obviously Garbisi. He's absolutely fantastic, and the fullback Jacopo Trulla as well. He was a very exciting player under 20s level. And they seem to really like him. And I know, Conor, you spoke about the inexperience. This is another inexperienced backline going to Twickenham. It could be ugly, but I mean, they have a decent back row to Italy. I quite like Mayer and Negri. I've watched a bit of them this year. They're good operators. They're very good operators. But anyway, right, let's get on to the really exciting stuff. Come on, because we're talking about teams trying to try something out and throw the young guys in. Yannick, France have done that. And speaking, we said we'll delay this conversation because it's inevitable, but we have to have it. How, in the name of God, do Ireland stop Antoine Dupont this weekend?
Well, I hope they will not. Anyway, I don't think they will, to be honest with you. It's too good. It's just simply too good at the moment. I believe he's probably the best number 9 in the world now. If not, he's getting there. I think Ireland will struggle, maybe. I hope so, but it's going to be tough on the ruck. I think France have to be better on the ruck, and I think they have to push Ireland to kick the ball back to us. I think that will be the plan game, but I think it's going to be fast and furious. I believe they probably will put Penaud instead of Teddy Thomas, because I recall Teddy Thomas did struggle a lot against Sexton with his high kick, and Penaud is very confident with high kick. So I don't know, but I believe we probably will see Penaud this weekend, and that will be another problem to deal with Ireland, I think. So a lot of youngsters, they play well, full of confidence. Sorry. So I'm hoping for the best. Ready? I'm hoping it's a good game, and hopefully we will see some champagne rugby.
I'm glad you brought up Penaud, because I think he's fantastic. He had an injury there before, didn't he? But I remember it was either the 2020 or 2019 Six Nations. He was absolutely electric, and all of a sudden he's not in the team. I think that has a lot to do with the Toulon winger, doesn't it? Villiers. He's been quite impressive, hasn't he?
Yes. Villiers, but I think Penaud, because he's back in form now. I know he did train quite well. I believe he will play. I don't know. I may be wrong, but I think he will drop Teddy Thomas and Penaud.
That makes sense.
Is what he's going to do. And
that makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, he cannot have Penaud and Teddy Thomas together. They're two similar players, Villiers and Penaud, or Villiers. But I believe Penaud will come this weekend. So that is going to be tricky for Ireland to deal with, I think.
Very.
But I think Ireland will kick the ball to us.
Very. Conor, Yannick spoke about the breakdown there, that France need to improve a little bit there. Ireland were pretty good there. Was that a little bit of hope for the Irish from the weekend?
Yeah, just to chink a light after watching the both matches at the weekend, that we might be able to have some joy at the breakdown. I'm not so sure though. I think Sean Edwards is probably going through defensive drills all week with your guys about protecting the ball better and having men around the ruck. So I'm a bit concerned as regards Monsieur Dupont. I think we need Josh van der Fleer tracking him all day, and hope we reduce his opportunities to a minimum. He's just so creative. You know, we were talking about him before the show. I just don't see any weaknesses in this game at all. Like, apart from his basics, they're superb. His support lines, his creativity, his kicking, his deception, his vision. He's just an all-around player. Possibly he's going to go down as an all-time great. 23 years old, and he's already probably the best scrum half in the world. There's going to be opportunities, and one of Ireland's issues in recent years has been our narrow defence and our wingers being exposed on the outside. That's a real concern now this weekend. Like with Wales, they caught us at the weekend with Louis Rees-Zammett's try. He was out on his own on the wing. Lowe got sucked in took command. Went for North in the centre and left young Rees-Zammett free on the outside. So
to be fair though, I think our line speed, obviously the basics, the line speed has to be massive. We have to keep slowing down the ball. We did that really well at the weekend. We have to get our tackles in and look after our ball better and play in the right areas of the pitch. Then you reduce the number of opportunities for France.
But I
Personally,
think we'll have to outscore them. Which will be
personally,
hard.
I think it's fascinating because Yannick spoke about trying to make Ireland kick back to France. Well, that's exactly what Ireland looked to not do against Wales. They looked to hold on to possession, and it seemed like every time they held on to the ball, they went through 10 plus phases, granted without the scoring results at the end of it. So that's going to be a really interesting battle to see who's able to do that. Are France going to make Ireland ball back or not?
But what I like at the moment with the French rugby as well, we go Galtier display a lot of freedom, and many times we go a winger come close to the 9 and 10 zone, and I give they break down the line so many times, and that is great. I mean, because they're not on their wings, they de-zone completely, they leave their zone, they come between the 9 and the 10, they're over there. I think it could be tricky for Ireland. It's not only Dupont to be concentrated. He's on a rock zone. It's going to be I think it's going to be the battle. It's going to be on a rock zone, and everything will happen there.
Yeah, the breakdown's going to be huge. Conor, it's interesting you make that point about James Lowe and having to make that read for the Reece Samet try. Lowe's had his issues making defensive reads. He didn't play for Leinster for a while when he first came over because they didn't trust him defensively, I think. But to be fair to him, he made an awful read the first time Wales attacked. I think when Ben went, you'll probably know more about this, but Wales threw the ball wide early and they had a bit of space with Halfpenny out on the right-hand side. Lowe made a bad read there. But to be fair to Lowe for the Reece Samet try, I think that's to be honest, that's a read he doesn't have to make with 15 men on the park. I just think he's able to shift out one more, and he doesn't have to.
I don't think I heard him being criticised for both the tries for his position. I think the first one on North, there's a couple of things that went wrong before him. First of all, Wales got the nudge. It's just a small nudge at the scrum, but it was enough to put us on the back foot and allow Wales line speed Wales attacking line to get up a bit further. So immediately when that happens, you have to change tactics, and you have to recycle and kick. The scrum is inside your own 22. You recycle and you get rid of it, and you put pressure on the Wales line out, as we've been doing all day. Ring rolls carried into contact. The Wales defence was up flat, and he attempted an offload to Sexton, which was a big error, and that led to the try. Then Murray threw a ball was a comedy of errors then, and Lowe came in when he shouldn't have.
It's a tough one, that Gary one, because everyone wants Ireland to play a much more expansive style, and he did so well to step past the onrushing Tompkins initially in the line to make the break, and then Sexton calls for an offload, and if it wasn't for a fingertip in the tackle from Tompkins, the offload goes to Sexton, and God knows where he's off at the races. So it's one of those ones where if it comes off, everyone says you're brilliant and what made fantastic rugby, and if it doesn't, everyone's giving out to you for playing fast and loose. But it's
a high risk play. It's a high risk play in your own 22, though,
with 14 men as well. Agreed.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've been on for over an hour now. These things always go by so quickly. Turns out I love talking rugby too much, and I don't keep an eye on the clock. Let's finish off quickly. I'll go to each one of you, and let's get some score predictions for the weekend. So we'll start with the France-Ireland. Yannick, you talk about the breakdown or the ruck zone, how important that's going to be. Will France get the upper hand there and come and get a result?
I think so. I think it's going to be close, but I give France by 6-7 points. France
by 6 or 7. Conor, do you agree?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I'm afraid. I think we'll struggle to stop France scoring a couple of tries at least, and we'll probably lose by 7-10.
Okay, so you're a little bit more pessimistic. Right, Ben, let's go to you. The other massive game, Wales-Scotland. We'll really find out where Wales are playing against Scotland, a rejuvenated Scotland. Wow, how do you see it going?
From a Welsh perspective, I hope that Scotland can pull two performances as good as they did on Saturday together. I think, we talked about Cam Redpath earlier on. He's not playing. We talked about Jamie Ritchie. He's not playing. So, these key players that were vital to Scotland's success on the weekend are not playing. We've got our injury concerns as well, but I just think that we're starting to move in the right direction. I think Saturday is another step that we need to move forward. I don't see it being pretty. I don't see Wales trying too much. I think they'll go up to Scotland with a very simple game plan, play in the right areas of the field, and I see us maybe pinching it by 3 to 5 points, but it certainly won't be a big winning margin as we would usually expect over the years against Scotland.
Okay, so Ben's calling a 3-point win for Wales there. Debbie, surely this wounded England side goes and puts 50 points on Italy, no?
I think they'll put points on Italy, but I think Italy will also score against England. They normally do. I think England by 35 for this one.
England by 35. And the other thing, actually, I wanted to quickly ask, I should have asked you again, Yannick. Do you see this game, the Ireland game, being high scoring, a high scoring close match, or do you think?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Tricky. It could be either way to me. Could be either way, that one.
Go
on, Conor.
Yeah, I think France are good for 2 or 3 tries on any day now against anyone. I think we'll be.
The good thing is, and it's not a good thing by anything. The changing thing is obviously it's no supporter, and that is a big thing for France, I think, because you know, like last week with against Scotland, Wales, Ireland, supporter, thing changed.
Yeah, no, of course.
So I think France depends. I think they start to play, and and I haven't got the support. It could be everywhere.
I think when you're underdogs and you're playing at home, that the crowd often gives you that extra few percent to get you over the line. But without the home crowd and the Aviva, that's her advantage neutralised. Unfortunately,
if he was a supporter in Twickenham last weekend, England would not lost against Scotland.
Oh, that's a big call. That's a big call.
They would not lost because he was tight. He was really tight. He was 6 points in it. 80,000 people in Twickenham is a nightmare. Yeah. And I guarantee they will give the boost for England to beat Scotland on that game.
Debbie, do you agree? You look skeptical.
It was a tight game, but no.
Okay. Well,
history would tell us that Yannick is probably right. How often did England lose at home in Twickenham in front of a full crowd?
I had a good go last 2 years ago against Scotland when they
2 years ago. Yeah. That was a strange game, though.
It was fantastic. It was great fun, that game.
It was good fun, yeah.
Right. Well, one thing we all can agree on is like the sooner we all get back into the stands, and there are 80,000 people at Twickenham or 75 in Cardiff or whatever, the sooner the better. Right. So I think that's just about all we have. Gerald thinks Ireland going to hold out for a 5-point win. I wish I shared your optimism, Gerald.
Come on, Gerald. What do you think, Nathan? You never gave your prediction.
I think if Ireland hold on to the ball like they did against Wales, the problem is that they'll do well, but the problem is they won't pull away from France, whereas France can pull away with their counter attack from Ireland. So I think if Ireland go with the same possession based game and they cut out the needless errors, like we mentioned, the Earls kick, the ring roads offload, if they cut those out and of course keep 15 men on the park, for the love of God, I think they've got a chance. I think they'll lose. If that happens, I still think they'll lose by 3. But equally, Dupont could go.
If everything goes perfectly, we'll lose by 3.
I think so. To be honest with you, I don't know. Put it this way: I'm not as pessimistic. Even though we lost against Wales, I'm not as pessimistic as I would have been before the start of the tournament. Playing against France last weekend was encouraging, I thought. But yeah. Anyway, so we've gone France win, Wales tight win, and then England will bounce back against Italy. But even though they Italy we didn't have time to have the Italy conversation, sadly. We'll have to have you back on to talk about the Italy conundrum. But I think, judging from what we were saying beforehand, quite a lot of us believe that the talk of kicking them out is harsh and a bit premature.
Yeah.
There was some interesting stuff going on in our chat. I just thought I should bring out. Brandon was talking about Sean Edwards down in France, and the French Rugby Twitter released an interview they had with him today. If anyone wants a little giggle, go and watch Sean Edwards trying to speak French. It's definitely worth the 2 minutes. The 2 minutes to try and figure
was he
that out.
speaking
Anyway,
French?
Joey Barton style, is it?
Joey Barnes. Anyway, go check that out. We've run way over time, but we've had a fantastic chat.
Oh, well.
Thanks to all of you for coming on. To Debbie from England. Ben was our Welsh correspondent. Yannick of France, and of course Conor. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks, Nathan.
Couple of announcements before we go, which our big Joe Shep wants me to call out. There we go. There's one announcement. Next Monday, the Keego and Big Joe show will be looking at the Six Nations, and the Italy topic will come up. We should remind you all that the ThreeBOD rugby group, the Three Blokes A Ball and Bod Facebook page is closing down, and there's a new ThreeBOD rugby group Facebook page. I'm sure Brandon or Joe will put a link in this video on the Facebook description, wherever that is. Friday night at 8 p.m. we have a Scotland versus Wales preview show coming out, and then we're doing another GoggleBOD after doing the Ireland Wales game last weekend. Saturday 4:30. Scotland versus Wales. That's about it. You got anything else to say, Conor?
No, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's been a pleasure. Some great discussion tonight. And we'll see you all next month.
Cheers. Take it easy, everyone.
Bye-bye.